Good morning to all the participants and our respected resource person of this session, Dr. Shobik Sanyal, sir. I welcome you, sir, to this morning session of capacity building program. And before beginning the session, sir, I'll just in brief share your profile with all our participants who have joined us today. So, Dr. Shobik Sanyal is a dynamic academician with a rich and varied teaching experience of more than 14 years in various universities in India and Oman. He has a PhD in marketing and he is an active researcher with more than 13 publications. He has largely been engaged in course curriculum review and its development, and he has also prepared proposals for new programs which have been incorporated into the university he is working into. He is passionate about teaching and is a firm believer that a student centric learning approach works the best. So you have also published various research papers in national and international repute. I welcome you, sir, once again to this morning session. And I now invite our respected Dean of Pandit Madan Mohan Malviya School of Commerce and Management Sciences to extend a formal welcome note, sir. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Siddharth. And at the outset, I would like to welcome the resource person of today's session, and the who is resource person in the 2 week capacity building program on research and publication ethics. My good friend, my classmate, not only in BCom but also in MBA, Dr. Sovik Sanyal. He has he has been so kind enough, he has been so humble that he has accepted my request in a very short period of time. I have requested him just 10-15 days before, but he has been so humble that he has been accepting my request. He has been my resource person in the last year in a national seminar. So he has been directly contributing in all the programs organized by the Department of Management Sciences of Mahatma Gandhi Central University. I extend you warm welcome, Dr. Shobik Sanyal, and it is my proud privilege that you have spared your valuable time to us. I also like to welcome the all the participants who have joined, not only from India, from the across also, because we have few participants from the foreign countries too. So welcome once again, Dr. Shovik.
Thank you so much, Professor Pavnesh. It is my honor and my privilege to be here today to present a lecture on the topic of plagiarism. What is it and how to avoid it? At the outset, I would like to extend my thanks to the Department of Management Sciences, Mahatma Gandhi Central University, Motihari, Bihar, for extending me this invite to speak on this very important 2 week capacity building program on research and publication ethics. I do believe that research is the foundation, I mean, it is the base for life in academia. At the national and the international level, we now have, the new tagline that says that we have to publish or perish, and the publications have become a very important part of our academic portfolio. And of course, the publications are a very important backup to our teaching. I do believe that our research will lead us to have a research teaching nexus wherein we can incorporate our research and our findings in our daily classroom teaching to bring the perspectives of the real life scenarios and what is happening on the ground to our students at the graduate and undergraduate and postgraduate level. So once again, I am thankful to the Department of Management Sciences and to my friend Professor Pavnesh Kumar. With this, I would like to start today's interaction. First of all, you must have discussed a lot about ethics in research, but still, I would like to go over a few points here, starting off with ethics in research before I get to the core topic of today's lecture, that is plagiarism. So ethics, have basically, when we talk about academic research and publication, which is the cornerstone of our life as an academician. It's a very, very important part of our portfolio. All academicians are expected to engage in research apart from their teaching activities, and research is very important because it adds and contributes and expands the theory. Okay, whatever we are teaching, whichever subjects we are taking up. Now the question comes that what do you mean by ethics in research, and why are ethics important? So first of all, basically, research ethics are nothing but moral principles. There are a few written down guidelines I would like to share here later on. I hope I can be able to share the ethics policy of my university here in Oman. So basically, there are some written guidelines and there are some things which are unwritten, but they are expected to be followed when we come to, talking about research and publication. In the last few years, we have seen that there has been a proliferation of publications, research publications, especially in the fields of engineering, in the fields of social sciences, and even in the field, our field of management and commerce. We have seen the issues of fake articles. We have seen the issues of predatory publications, hijacked publications, and so many other issues which have come up, which are directly concerned with the ethics and the ethical principles when it comes to research. So basically, research ethics are the moral principles that are there to guide the researchers when they are conducting and reporting their research, either through the means of research reports or through their publications in various journals, without deception or intention to harm the participants of the study or members of the society as a whole, whether knowingly or unknowingly. The key word here is deception. And when I say deception can be in various forms. It can be, like taking others' ideas and presenting them as your own. It can be quoting from others' work without proper referencing or citations. It can be like falsification of data. It can be revealing the identity of the participants of your study, which may cause different kinds of problems to them. And basically, this can be done knowingly or unknowingly. It is not that the researcher is doing everything knowingly. Many times, because of the lack of the knowledge, basically on the part of the researcher, as to what is permissible, what is ethical, and what is not ethical, many a times people do things unknowingly, which later can cause problems, or which turn out to be unethical in nature. So basically, practicing the ethical guidelines while conducting and reporting the research is very essential in order to establish the validity of your research. Because research should be something that is reproducible. Research should be something that is universal. So there are many people who will quote, who will cite your research. There are many people who will try to implement your conceptual framework under different situations, in different contexts, perhaps in different universities. So basically, this is important, that whatever we are stating, whatever we are saying, whatever we are quoting, and the results that we are presenting, have to follow certain ethical and moral guidelines, which are very, very necessary in order to prove, or in order to validate our research, in order to make our research foolproof, in order to make our research acceptable across the academia as a whole. Following these ethical guidelines basically will ensure that your research is authentic and error-free. So these two things are the basics of what we are looking for when we are doing a research study. First of all, that our research should be authentic, it should be true, it should be real. Whatever we are saying, whatever data we are presenting, whatever findings we are presenting should be authentic, number one. And number two, it should be free from error as far as possible. The research should be error free. And these are the two criteria which will allow you as a researcher to gain credibility in the academic community, and also support from your institution and other institutions, and from the general public. So summing it up, we can say that research ethics are certain moral principles and guidelines which, when followed, will lead to a solid research, will validate the research that we are doing, and will ensure our research is error free. There are no errors, and it is authentic, it is true, and That makes our research acceptable, and that makes our research reproducible across various time zones and across various times and across various, you can say, contexts or settings. So this is very, very necessary. In continuation, as a researcher, we must adhere to the ethical guidelines while presenting our findings in our manuscript. Basically, the data that we are using, from where we are getting the data, okay, how authentic the data is, how foolproof the data is, what methods we are using to analyze our data, and how we are presenting our findings. In all of these, not only it is not only in the, quotation and literature review that we have to be ethical, but basically collecting the data, analyzing the data, and presenting our results. Here are also there are many ethical issues that that are involved in these steps also. Apart from that, research ethics fill in a sense of responsibility among the researchers. So a person who is ethical in research, he has a sense of responsibility. He knows that what he is allowed to do and what is not allowed, what is not acceptable, what are the things that will make his research foolproof, what are the things that will make his research authentic. And also, following the research ethics makes it easy to fix responsibility in case of misconduct. So what is basically misconduct? There are many cases which are classified as misconduct. So in the case of a misconduct, it becomes necessary to fix the responsibility, that who is responsible. Okay, because if there is an issue or somebody claims that you have stolen his or her idea, his or her framework, his or her data, such kind of cases, then we have to fix the responsibility and take the necessary corrective action. Many researchers face ethical dilemmas. Even we, all of us, have, as researchers, when we were conducting our research, we must have faced at times many ethical dilemmas where we were in a dilemma as to whether what we are doing is actually, is it permissible, is it ethical, is it acceptable or not. So there are several ethical dilemmas that all researchers, whatever your field may be, it may be commerce, management, engineering, social sciences, whatever. So there are many different ethical dilemmas that researchers face, and some even, and many times, it has been seen that we researchers have even faced rejection from journals, or they have had to retract their the manuscripts from journals, because the journals refused to publish them. Why? Just because of lack of adherence or not following the ethical guidelines. So whenever you see the author, the author guidelines, etc., of any journal, they have their policies clearly written down. They have certain things, especially regarding plagiarism, etc. They are very strict about it, especially the good journals, the Scopus Indexed and Web of Science journals. They are very, very particular about these issues, and any manuscript which they feel is not following these guidelines, they will reject. But unfortunately, all of us now as academicians, especially those who are into teaching and who are teaching in colleges and universities, are under pressure to publish their research. So publication has become a very, very important part of our work, of our life as academicians. And a lack of publication sometimes can, stop you from getting a promotion or from getting certain incentives, etc. So there is a pressure on all of us, to publish high quality research papers in good quality journals. And due to this pressure, several researchers, they just go a little loose on the guidelines. And sometimes they end up doing things which are classified as unethical practices. So like I said, it's not that everybody is doing it knowingly. Several times people do it unintentionally or unknowingly, but the results are always the same. I hope I am audible. Everybody can hear me?
Yes, sir, you are audible, sir. We can hear you.
I am audible, right? Okay, so going on continuing with the importance of ethics in research during this capacity building program, I am sure you must have gone through the importance of ethics several times, and several speakers must have spoken on the topic, but I will go through this once again just to emphasize the importance of ethics and how important basically ethics is when it comes to research and publishing your work. So research ethics are important for a wide number of reasons. Number one, firstly, is that these ethical guidelines which have been laid down by your institution or by the publications or the journals, basically, they are meant to promote the aims of research, such as expanding knowledge. So if you are a serious researcher, so one of the main aims of your research work is to not just reproduce or just to go through once again the frameworks and models that have already been given by others before, but one of the aims of your research is to add to that pool of knowledge. So actually the what do you call the identifier of a good research is basically what you are adding to the pool or the area of knowledge. So most of us, what we do is we take up conceptual models which have already been presented before by authors and by researchers in different settings, and we try to use the same conceptual models, or maybe we replace one variable with other variable, or we sometimes add a mediating variable or a moderating variable, and we try to come up with a new results. But actually the primary aim of research should be to expand the existing pool of knowledge. It is expected that researchers will add something new. Either they will expand a framework, or they will add something to the existing theory behind the topic that they are researching. So in this case, if this is the case, expanding knowledge is the primary aim of research, then ethics becomes very important, because you cannot aim to expand existing pool of knowledge. You cannot hope to add some new conceptual framework or to add some new theories if your research is not done following all the ethical principles that are guiding such research. And ethics also, they support the values which are required for collaborative work, such as mutual respect and fairness. So many a time, and in fact, if you see all the top journals, especially those which are in Web of Science or those who are having impact factor, one of the defining things that you will see, one of the very striking things you will see, is that you will have authors from several institutions. Okay, they are not all from the same place, and preferably the journal editors, they give weightage to those papers which have authors from different countries. So basically today's research calls for a high level of collaboration, and when we are working as a team, when there is a collaboration, there must be a sense of mutual respect and sense of fairness. So one of the things, for example, an example of unethical research is when you are citing somebody's work and you are not including him as an author, for example, or you are putting somebody's name without taking his prior permission and without showing him the work that you have done, for example. These are two examples of unethical practices when it comes to collaboration. This mutual respect and fairness is essential because, like I said, scientific research basically depends on collaboration between researchers and groups. So those days are gone when a single person would be able to conduct a research, collect the data, and present his findings. Basically, single author or even research papers with just two authors or two authors from the same institution are not given. This is my experience from attending several workshops and seminars and interacting with the editors of several eminent journals in different countries. They clearly give weightage to collaborative work, and specifically if the work is done by people in different settings and in different countries. So when it comes to collaboration, these principles of mutual respect and fairness have to be followed very, very closely, very carefully, in order to ensure that the collaboration stays. It is not just limited to one publication, but you have a research group which works together for years, and you are able to publish some significant research. Research ethics also mean that researchers can be held accountable for their actions, because when the guidelines are clearly laid down, then fixing the responsibility for any kind of misconduct or unethical behavior becomes easy. Many researchers are supported by public money. So, for example, many researchers are working on grants which are supported by the government, or which are supported, or grants given by their respective universities. And there are clear regulations on conflicts of what is conflicts of interest, what constitutes misconduct. Okay. And when it comes to scientific research involving humans, for example, clinical trials of new medicines, or research involving animals in biology and zoology and other things, it is necessary to ensure that the money which you are being funded with has been spent properly and appropriately. So, the question of ethics and plagiarism and falsification becomes even more crucial or more important when the researcher is being supported by a research grant, either being given by a government institution or by his university, because this is public money that is being given to you with the expectation that the researcher will conduct his research in a fair, appropriate, and ethical manner. Also, research ethics ensure that the public can trust the research. You see, the research has only some significance and meaning if the general public, not only the academic community, but if the general public trusts the research. You will find nowadays that there are several findings. For example, in post-COVID, there were so many reports coming in from the WHO and from others. And after a period of time, you must have heard people saying that, oh, this is what they are saying does not make any sense. What they are saying is not right. Okay, what they are saying is just nonsense. So what happened was that people just lost their faith, lost their trust in these reports that were coming in, of what is effective against COVID-19 and what is not effective, what should be done, what shouldn't. This was a classic example of the people losing trust in research. So the entire objective or the entire purpose of the research is lost if people or the general public, apart from the community, does not trust or does not believe in the research and the findings that has been done. So it is very important, in order to, if you want as a researcher that people and academics and the academic community has to support your research and to fund your further research, then people have to be confident in the research findings. So therefore, it is very, very necessary that the ethical principles have to be followed in order to gain the trust of the community at large. Also, research ethics support important social and moral values, such as the principle of doing no harm to others. This is one of the basic ethical principles which you will find when you go through the ethics of research. One of the basic principles is doing no harm to others. When I say others, it just means that whatever your research that you are doing, it should be with the consent of the participants. The information of the participants should be kept confidential. You first of all, whenever you are taking data, you tell your participants that your data will be kept confidential and we will not share this with anybody. This will be used only for academic purposes. But if you breach that trust and this data is used for commercial purposes, or it leaks the identity of the participants, then you never know what kind of harm it can do to them or their careers or their lives. So this is an example of one basic ethical principle, that is the principle of doing no harm to others. Like this, there are 5-6 basic principles which it is expected that any researcher in the social sciences or management sciences, they have to follow those ethical principles in order to validate their research and in order to make sure that their research is done on strong ethical grounds. So basically, this is an example of the do's and don'ts. What are the things that, as a researcher, how do you make sure that you are following the ethical and moral guidelines when you are doing your research? So there are some things that you have to do and there are some things which you should avoid. Many researchers actually do not have the idea, they do not have the proper knowledge, and that is why sometimes unintentionally they end up doing things which are not acceptable or which are not correct. So the first thing is that, first of all, as a researcher, you have to maintain a good record of all your research activities and report your data as carefully and objectively as possible. Now, this is very clear, and this is one of the basic things you are doing as a researcher. And so one of the main things that as comes that comes under unethical research is like falsification of data. You just do fill in some data without even doing a survey, for example, or you do a survey of 100 people, but you add another 100 to that and you make your sample size 200. Why? Because the analytical tool that you are using, for example, MOS with SPSS, needs at least 250 to 300 samples. So these are some just basic things which you should be not doing. And what you should not be doing is fabrication, manipulation, or misrepresentation of data. So there are three things here which are unethical. Fabrication is outrightly you are just manufacturing some data. Manipulation means you are changing the data to suit to come to the result that you want. For example, there is a particular variable which may not be supporting your hypothesis, and you expected that this particular variable should support your hypothesis. For example, this relation between the dependent and independent variable should support the hypothesis. So what you do, you just manipulate some of the records and just try to make the things according to your suitability. But that is one of the basic mistakes or basic unethical things that people do. And the third thing is misrepresentation. So the data is there, but you misrepresent it in order to support your conclusions or the conclusions and the results that you want. Second thing is conflict of interests. If there are any financial or personal interests that may affect your work directly or indirectly, there has to be full disclosure. So in research, there is something called conflict of interests, and you have to mention clearly if there are any conflict of financial interests or personal interests as far as your research is concerned. What you should not do is you should not in any way deceive your sponsors, your colleagues, or any kind of ethical committees by having a bias, for example, data interpretation, or any bias in peer reviews, or personnel decisions, or even a bias while you are collecting your data, for example, because that in any way will it will mar your results. Your results won't be correct if you are having some kinds of sampling bias, for example, or data collection bias. When it comes to biological and other scientific research, it is expected that animals are treated with care and respect, for example, when studying them in your research and adhering to ethical guidelines. For our field, in the field of management and commerce, we do not work with animals, but yes, this is very much applicable when it comes to the life sciences, research in the life sciences. And what you should not do is not using any external research data, published or unpublished, without permission. This is basically what is plagiarism. And this is what we'll be talking about. And in all cases, as a researcher, it is expected that you will respect intellectual property. Intellectual property basically means that you will not quote anybody or steal anybody. Not only stealing, not only copying and pasting their words, but even taking up an idea or stealing an idea without taking a permission or without giving due references. Even that comes under the ambit of plagiarism. We have to respect privacy and confidentiality. This is very, very important. Privacy and confidentiality of the people, of our respondents, and we have to give proper credit. Any credit, any contribution by anybody else has to be properly acknowledged and given due credit for. This is very, very important. What we should not do is we should stay away from irresponsible publication practices. For example, we know this very well that nowadays many of the journals are taking money for publishing your paper, and you are under pressure to publish. So people end up paying heavy amounts of money just to get their papers published. Well, in the short term, this may get you out of a soup, or this may serve your purpose. But in the long run, sooner or later, these journals which are taking money for publication, they are well identified within the academic community, and your research or your publications will not be taken seriously by others when they see that you have been publishing in journals that are known for taking, article processing charges and taking money to publish. So your main goal basically should be to advance the science and to share the knowledge within the community. This is the goal of a researcher in any field of research. How to advance the field of study that you are working in, and how can you share your knowledge in a way that is beneficial for others? How can you share your knowledge in a way that can help others? And this is basically the main idea behind your research. So these are some basic do's and don'ts which have to be followed. So like now I was saying that there are the 5 basic principles. I was talking about the principles of basically the research ethics. So the first one, just quickly we'll go through them. Minimizing the risk of harm. So there are many kinds of things, which constitute harm. They can be physical harm, psychological distress, social disadvantage, anything that will harm the financial status of the participants, or any invasion of participants' privacy and anonymity. This has to be avoided at all costs, and this is the first principle of research ethics that you have to follow, that is minimizing the risk of harm to the participants in the research. Secondly, very important is informed consent. Informed consent means you should not be taking information from others. Ideally, you should not be taking any information from others without taking their consent for the same. So one of the foundations of research ethics is the area of informed consent. Simply put, informed consent means that the participants, whomever you are involving in your study or from whom you are filling up your questionnaires or surveys, they have to understand that they are taking a part in a research. They have to know what the research is about and what the research requires from them. This information which you should give to them, it may include the purpose of your research, what methods you are using in your research, what may be the possible outcomes or results of the research, and any other associated demands, discomforts, inconvenience, and risks that the participant may face. You have to tell them everything in advance, okay, before you are involving them as participants in your research study. So this is the principle of obtaining informed consent. Third and most important, very important, is protecting the anonymity and confidentiality of your participants. So protecting the anonymity and confidentiality of research participants is another practical component of research ethics. After all, the participants will only be willing to volunteer their information, especially information which is of a private nature or a sensitive nature, something relating, for example, to their health or something relating to their finances. Okay. These are private and sensitive information. So somebody will only give you this information if the researcher agrees to hold these information in confidence. So when you are saying that you will protect, or you are saying that your information will be kept confidential, then it is expected as a researcher that you will follow the ethics and you will not divulge this information in any way that will lead to any kind of harm or lead to the identities of these participants being exposed. So harm to participants can occur when the data is not treated confidentially, whether it is in terms of storage of data. Maybe you are not storing your data carefully, somebody steals the data and it is leaked and it is publicized, or during the analysis of the data, or even during the publication process. So this is a very, very important what we can say is a cornerstone of research ethics, that is protecting the anonymity and confidentiality of the participants. Avoiding any deceptive practices. Now this is very ambiguous. Deceptive practices cover the scope of deceptive practices is very wide. Okay, so basically avoiding deceptive practices, sometimes it is not possible all the time. For example, there is a kind of research known as covert research. Covert research means when you are doing a kind of research when it is not possible to let everybody know. Due to the nature of the research study, you are not able to divulge everything about your research or what you are trying to do or what is it based on. Okay, so in this kind you are doing a covert research. For example, if you are simple example, you are observing people who are doing their work, who are going about doing their business, or people who are going to work as a part of a study. So people going to work, or For example, fly in the wall research, consumer behavior. In consumer behavior, we have what is known as fly on the wall. Like, you are observing what people are buying just to find out, what are the trends in the consumer market, what people are buying, what people are preferring. So you're just observing people, what they are buying. Here, you are not involving them. Basically, this is a covert research. So you are not telling them what you are doing. So when you are doing these kind of things like covert research, you have to make sure that, uh, the confidentiality and other things are maintained. And of course, everybody should be given the right to withdraw. For example, at any stage of the research process, if any of the participants feel that they do not want to continue with the study, okay, they should be given the right to withdraw at any stage in the research process. So these are some of the common or well established ethical principles. Other than that, of course, there are several ethical principles. For example, that we should avoid stealing ideas, we should avoid copying others' ideas verbatim. That is what comes under the ambit of plagiarism, basically. So duplicate submissions, falsification and fabrication of research data, like I said, this is a very common practice, unfortunately. Fabrication. Falsification is the manipulation of the methods used in the research or manipulation of the key findings to produce a desired outcome. This is what I was talking to you in the previous slides, that you are changing the data or you are falsifying the data because you want a particular desired outcome. Okay, you want something to be proved or you want something to be not to be supported. So the data that you are getting is not giving you the desired outcome. So what happens that people try to manipulate the data. This is falsification. Fabrication is just, you are not doing anything, but you are totally falsely recording a fictitious data where actually there is no data at all. So fabrication actually is one step ahead of falsification. So fabrication is, totally, that means you have been fully unethical. You have just manufactured some data which without doing any survey or anything. That is fabrication. So these are some of the, things that should be avoided under all costs. Then now we come to very, very important aspect when it comes to all of us as academicians and all of us have as researchers, and this today is also the topic of today's lecture, that is plagiarism. All of us have had to face problems, okay, especially while writing literature review. Okay, not only literature review, even when reporting your your analytical results. All of us have come across this problem of similarity, that whenever we turn in our ideas, for example, we use plagiarism checker softwares like Turnitin and Authenticate to find out what is the level of plagiarism or what is the degree of plagiarism. Because for example, most of the good journals, they expect that your plagiarism should not go above, say, 10% or 12%. Different journals have different criteria. And sometimes, it becomes people are in a quandary, like how should we write a literature review, how should we quote others, and when we are doing so, and even when we are changing the words, etc., that is, we are paraphrasing, but still, we get a high level of plagiarism. This is something which has been faced by all of us at one point or the other. So first of all, let us talk about exactly what do we understand by the meaning of this word plagiarism. So actually, plagiarism is nothing but the practice of using others' work or ideas in your scientific writing and research without giving them any due credit. Number one, you are stealing somebody's or you are using somebody's ideas. I am saying ideas, not only plagiarism does not only consist of, just copying and pasting from others' written work. But even if you are taking somebody's idea, for example, you are taking somebody's concept or conceptual model or conceptual framework without giving them the credit, so even that constitutes plagiarism, and you pass them off as your own in any journal publication in order to get them published or to gain the recognition. So plagiarism basically is you are using other people's ideas, you are using other people's work, and you are showing them as your own without giving them credit for it. So even there is something called also self-plagiarism, like you are quoting your own work. Okay, you have written a journal article and you are writing another article. and you are quoting from your previous article that has already been published, that is called self plagiarism. Even self plagiarism constitutes plagiarism. Okay, even there you have to give quotation, full quotation. Even if it is your own work, you have to give a proper citation, proper reference. So even using your own text from other publications in the current writing without due reference is considered plagiarism. More specifically, it is called self plagiarism, means you are plagiarizing from your own work. And of course, plagiarism may be intentional or unintentional. Sometimes you do not intend to do it, okay, but after doing it, after doing a particular work, you find out that this work or this study or this something like this has already been done by somebody else. So that is unintentional plagiarism. But unfortunately, I'm sorry to say this, that most of the plagiarism that is done and that is reported has been done fully intentionally, knowing fully well that this idea is not my own, but still I am using it. And this is quite common in the field of publication nowadays, in the field of research. So let's go ahead. So there are certain aspects of plagiarism. First is, the authorship conflict. So there are some guidelines which have been given by the ICMJE, that is the International Committee of Medical Journal Editors. This is a American body. According to their guidelines, any person who contributes to the conception, designing, or acquisition of research data or analysis of data, drafting or revision of the article, and its final approval before publication is entitled for the authorship of that paper. So any person who has helped in ideation, any person who has even helped you in data collection, or any person who has proofread, for example, or revised your article, all of them have, or they are entitled for the authorship. Okay, you cannot keep away such people from the authorship of your paper. If you are doing so, then it becomes a case of plagiarism. So these are the following some unethical practices that lead to authorship conflict. For example, not including the name of the person who contributes to the research in any manner. Okay, whether the person has contributed to your model, or the person has contributed, like I said, to collection of your data, or the person has analyzed your data. If, for example, you're getting somebody to analyze your data, you have to put his name because he has worked on it, he has contributed. And even person who is just reading your article and revising some part of it, they are fully entitled. You cannot refuse them. If they want their names to be put in the as authors of that paper, they cannot be refused. Failure to obtain consent from a person whose name is cited in the manuscript. So sometimes what happens, that people, just to get their papers published, they take the name of for example, a well-known author or a well-known academician, and they fail to take their consent. Okay, so not taking prior consent from a person and including his name in the manuscript is also direct plagiarism. Then adding an extra author. So sometimes when you send your paper to a journal, and they give it back to you for reviews, etc., then they say that, okay, you can make editing, you can make some changes. But if you add an existing author or remove the name of an existing author before or after the publication without informing them, yes, then that is also an authorship conflict. So that is also an unethical practice. So these are some of the things which should be very, very clear when it comes to authorship conflicts. Then there is something which is known as conflict of interest, basically. So conflict of interest is a situation in which the author of the research study may be influenced by some personal consideration or by some financial consideration to affect the quality or the results of the research. So if you have, willingly or unwillingly, wittingly or unwittingly, you have taken some financial, help or financial contribution or something from someone or some organization, or there is some personal interest involved, okay, maybe a relative or a friend or somebody, and this is affecting, or if this affects the end output or the end result, then this comes under what is known as conflict of interest, which should be avoided. So basically, what is plagiarism? Coming to it back again, it is one of the most common problems that are faced by researchers all over the world while conducting and publishing their research. So this problem is how to avoid. How do we avoid plagiarism? So basically, plagiarism is nothing but presenting someone else's work or ideas as your own, with or without their consent, by incorporating it in your work without full acknowledgement. So you have to acknowledge. The idea is you have to acknowledge whatever you are, even whenever you are using any other person's work, you have to acknowledge it that this is the work done by others. So once you do this, your work becomes free from plagiarism. All published and unpublished material, whether in manuscript, printed, or electronic form, is covered under this definition. So all kinds of material, whether it is online or offline. Plagiarism, like I said before, it may be intentional or reckless, or it may be unintentional. So let us look at some examples. For example, the inclusion in your research of any passages, sentences, or even phrases which are quoted directly from other authors without any citation or acknowledgement. And how do you acknowledge? By quotation marks and appropriate references. So referencing is the citation, and referencing are the only things which can rid your work of plagiarism. So either you use quotation marks, and then in the brackets you write the name of the authors from whom you have taken it, or you cite it properly and in your bibliography, in text and in the bibliography, and this will rid your work of plagiarism. If you are not doing that, this is an example of plagiarism. Or for example, the unacknowledged paraphrasing of the work of other authors, that is the representation even in your own words of the work of other authors without giving a proper reference to the original source. Now many people think that if we just take some written material written by somebody else and we paraphrase it and just rewrite it in we just paraphrase it and rewrite it in our own words. But basically, plagiarism is not only about the words. Plagiarism is about copying the idea of somebody without giving them proper referencing, without acknowledging their work. So even paraphrasing, even if you paraphrase something taken from others and you don't acknowledge their work, or you do not acknowledge the original source, even after paraphrasing, your work remains plagiarized. Okay. So plagiarism, basically, we have already done it. For example, I am giving you an example from my university, Dhofar University. So we have a final year project which we call BUSS 404. This is the code that has been given to this final year project. This has to be done by all students in their final year of graduation, that is the fourth year. Here we have a 4-year graduation program. So in the fourth year of graduation, they have to do a final year research project involving primary data. So in the guidelines, it has been clearly defined. We have defined exactly what we mean by plagiarism. For example, we have written here that plagiarism is defined as the unauthorized use of the work of another person or on one's own, whether or not such work has been published. A student at Dhofar University shall not engage in plagiarism, nor employ, nor seek, nor employ any other unfair means for an examination, any other form of work submitted for assessment. And this is the things that we show to them and we tell them. And all the projects that are submitted here, we check them through our Turnitin software, because we have subscribed to Turnitin, and we maintain a similarity rate of 20%. Anything more than 20%, and the final research reject is the project is rejected. So it says here clearly that what are the things. So the instructor at the beginning of the research project shall explain to the students the meaning of the term plagiarism. This is what we do. And the consequences of committing such an act means failure for the entire project course. An appropriate action can be taken by the instructor to cancel the project and award 0 in the project marks. So basically, so 20%, like it is written here clearly, this is to notify that the instructor and group member that any research project with similarity index above 30, excluding the bibliography, 20% from same source shall not be accepted. So previously, actually, this was 30%, but now this has been reduced to 20%. Anything above 20%, excluding, of course, the bibliography, will be given 0. So this is an example of how we try to, reduce the plagiarism, at least when it comes to our project work and this thing. And we are quite serious. And all the universities, basically, which are working in the Middle East and other areas, they are pretty much serious about this. So anyone who breaks this norm, he is directly awarded 0, and he has to repeat the project. He or she or they have to repeat the project in the next semester. So basically, so continuing with, this was just an example. So continuing with other examples of plagiarism, the use of arguments or parts of arguments which are derived from other authors and the presentation of evidence taken from other authors without proper referencing, this also constitutes plagiarism. Simply copying another person's work and presenting it as your own without any changes, this of course is plagiarism. Downloading materials from the internet and pretending it as your own. Like you see, under every slide, I have given the source, basically because I don't want my presentation here to be plagiarized. So once I am quoting the source and I am citing the source, that makes my work plagiarism free. Helping or colluding with others to cheat. So you know that somebody is doing something which is unethical. They are cheating or they are doing something which is unfair. Okay, and you are helping them. Okay, or you're collaborating with them. Even that constitutes plagiarism. So basically, so these are the various examples of plagiarism. There may be other examples, but these are the most common examples of plagiarism. And it goes without saying that plagiarism is treated by academic institutions as a misconduct, and people who are indulging in this will be penalized for the same. So basically, what makes plagiarism unacceptable? Well, because plagiarism infringes on academic ethics and academic norms. It is basically nothing but a type of intellectual property theft. It is a type of fraud. Plagiarists, ultimately, they cheat themselves. Sooner or later, they are bound to get caught, and this way people have, been discredited, and years of work have been lost, and loss of face because of these practices, which people may have done long before, but it was exposed after many years, and they have been in different kinds of problems. And basically, plagiarism reflects the incompetence of the researcher. Basically, it shows that the researcher is either he is unable to, he is not competent enough to do this research on his own. He is not competent enough to conceptualize and to write and to collect and analyze the data on his own. So basically, it is nothing but it is a reflection of incompetence of those people who are indulging in such a practice. So if this is such, if there are so many and it is well recognized as a what do you call, as a misconduct, then still why do people plagiarize? The question is, well, simply put, and the first and the most the most common reason, I guess, is that there is intense pressure. So if you are a PhD student today, you have to publish a journal in Scopus and one paper international, one paper national. I think these are the norms nowadays. So there is a pressure to get your PhD accepted, to become, to get your PhD granted. And of course, there is a pressure for promotions. Okay, you want promotions, and people who are working on contractual jobs, to renew your contract, you have to, publish papers. For example, in the GCC, for example, myself, where I'm working in Dhofar University, which is in Sultanate of Oman, we work on 2-year contracts, and in our contracts, our performance is appraised every year. And under the rules of the contract, for example, we have to publish minimum 1 journal in Scopus or Web of Science every year. Okay. So the first year, if you don't publish, then we are given a kind of warning. And the second year, again, if you don't publish, then our contract may not be extended. So it becomes mandatory for us to publish just in order to continue with our jobs. And this is the case in many universities, especially in America, etc., which follow the tenure track and contracts. So there is a heavy pressure to publish. Number one. Number two, sometimes the researchers are unable to come up with new ideas and concepts. Okay, they are unable to theorize, they are unable to conceptualize, and this leads them to, just copy others' ideas and concepts. Sometimes simply because there is so much of work pressure, there is no time to write and to write on your own. Another reason may be a poor understanding of the nature of plagiarism. Simply maybe because the person who is doing it does not actually know, truly, he does not know that what he is doing is an act of plagiarism. And last but not the least, simply just because it is easy, you can do it easily, you don't have to work, it saves your time, it saves your effort. So just you do it and you hope you don't get caught, or you just rephrase a few things and you hope you don't get caught. Okay, so because it is easy, people do it. Okay, and because people feel that who will take this time and effort, because writing a research paper which has to be published in a high level journal, say a scope or a publication with an impact factor in Web of Science, it may take you up to 1 year. It may take you up to 1 year to publish a paper, to just write and send it for publication. Publication will take another 1 year minimum. So people just don't want to put up the time and the effort, so that's why they come up with these things. So now the important thing is, okay, then how do we avoid it then? So if this is so harmful for us as academicians, then how do we avoid it? Well, firstly, use quotations. And quotations, for example, there are two categories here. Number one, when we are quoting somebody directly, okay, these are some rules and guidelines which if you follow, then you will be able to avoid the problem of plagiarism. So keeping the person's name near the quote in your notes and in your paper. So whenever you're writing something and you are taking something from somewhere, it's better to make a list that, okay, this is the citation, this is the reference which I have to give at the end of my paper. Select those direct quotes that makes the most impact on your paper. And if you take too many direct quotes, remember, if you quote and if you put too many quotations under quotation marks, okay, this will this leads to a loss of credibility basically. And the editors of articles, they do not accept those articles which have too many direct quotations. You can mention the person's name either at the beginning of the quote, in the middle, or at the end. Always put quotation marks around the text that you are quoting, and indicate added phrases. If you are adding some phrases from somebody, given by somebody, it's better always to use brackets, and if you are omitting something, then you can use ellipses. Ensure that you note the exact page numbers in the reference. So page numbers also, when you are referencing somebody, it's not just enough to give the name of the article, name of the paper, name of the journal, and the volume and the issue, but you should also, as per the APA citation guideline also, you have to include the exact page numbers in the reference. What about when you are quoting somebody indirectly? Then keep the person's name again near you. Rewrite the key ideas using the different words and sentence structures than the original text. Okay, mention the person's name, whether it is at the beginning of the information or in the middle or at the end, and double check to ensure that your words and sentence structures are different. So this is the difference between paraphrasing and writing your own work. And again, ensure that you have to note the exact page numbers whenever you are giving the reference. In general, the rule is that quote sparingly, and quotes are just appropriate when you are using an exact definition, or it is impossible for you. Sometimes it is just impossible. It becomes, you don't know how to do it. It is impossible for you to rephrase the origin. So if there is something, 1 or 2 or 3 sentences, which is totally impossible for you to rephrase without losing the meaning of the text, then you have to go for a quotation. Otherwise, avoid. And if you want to, for example, maintain the authority and the style of the author's words and his style of writing, then you have to go for quotes, but use them sparingly. Then one more very important tool in avoiding plagiarism is paraphrasing. So like I said, paraphrasing is a restatement of a text, passage, or work, giving the meaning in another form. It is a good way of avoiding plagiarism. But paraphrasing does not mean just you change 1 or 2 words. You have to totally rewrite it. Then only it is called paraphrasing. So how do you basically, it's like I said, it's using your own words to explain something from a source. Like here, see what I say. Paraphrasing does not mean just switching out a few words from a copied and pasted text, either manually or by using any other paraphrasing software like Quillbot. There are so many softwares nowadays, Quillbot, Spinbot. You put in your text and they will paraphrase it, and it is paraphrased. And the good thing is that, the plagiarism checker cannot find the difference. Okay. So your plagiarism, if you check it through Turnitin, for example, after using Quillbot, it will show that there is no plagiarism. But actually, it has not removed the plagiarism because you have just played around with the words. You have not restructured the sentences in your own language. The best way to avoid plagiarism is citation. So every time you quote or paraphrase, always you must include both an in-text or footnote citation clearly identifying the original author. This is the best way to avoid plagiarism. Each citation must correspond to the full reference in the referent list or bibliography. That means that whatever you are quoting in the text, it should be there in the bibliography. That citation should be there. This will help your reader to locate the source for themselves. So if somebody wants to find out the source, wants to read that article also, they can do it. Of course, there are so many citation styles. As researchers, we all know each one have their own styles, like APA, MLA, Chicago. Different journals, some journals they ask for APA, some journals they go for the Chicago style. So that depends upon the journal basically on which you are willing to or wishing to submit your manuscript. You have to use those citation styles. Finally, you have to check your work before submitting a paper. You have to check it carefully for errors that might constitute accidental plagiarism. So sometimes, plagiarism, like I said, may be accidental. You did not mean to do it, but it happened. So some common mistakes that happen, for example, you have forgotten to put some citation or you have misplaced the citation in the text. Maybe you have missed the quotation marks. Somewhere you wanted to put a quotation mark, but you missed it. Paraphrased material that is very similar to the original text. If you find that the material that you paraphrased is too similar to the original text, then you have to rewrite it some more. And if there is any source missing from the reference list, then you have to add it. Okay, sometimes we miss in the bibliography, we miss putting the reference that we have quoted in the text. So you have to make sure that all the quotations are there. So basically, in brief, we have to credit the original author in the in-text citation and reference list. Avoid copying when you take the notes. Use your own words and ideas. Paraphrase or quote from your sources and then add your own ideas in your own language. When taking notes, make sure that you write down the full reference of the source, including page numbers. This is very important. Many people forget to write the page numbers in their references. Keep a full track of citations. Whenever you are writing a paper, keep a full track. On another separate piece of paper you have to write, or on another separate page of MS Word, keep a track of all the citations and references and page numbers and quotations. Wherever possible, use plagiarism detection software. Like there are many softwares available, like the most common are Turnitin, which for example we use here. Authenticate is another software which in many cases is even better than Turnitin. It is always good to take advice from your peers and seniors. Whenever you are in doubt, you feel that I don't know whether this is plagiarism. Is it plagiarism? Okay, why don't you go and talk to your peers, maybe, or talk to your seniors, your colleagues, maybe they will be able to help you out. Plagiarism software, this has been duplicated. And of course, whenever you are in doubt, the best thing is to do is cite the source. So with this, I come to the end of my presentation on plagiarism. Thank you for listening to me so patiently. And if there are any questions, I would be happy to take them.
Yes, thank you, sir. I'd now like to invite our participants. If they want to ask a question, they can unmute themselves, and alternatively, they can put their questions in the chat box and I'll take their questions forward. Participants can unmute themselves and ask their questions, please. I'll just check the chat box. Okay, so there is one question, sir. Anant Sharma is asking a question. Anant, if you can unmute yourself. Anant, if you can unmute yourself.
Sir, good morning, sir. I am audible.
Yes,
Yes,
Anand,
you
you
are
are
audible.
audible. Please
Yes.
go ahead.
Sir, my question is when we check the percentage level of plagiarism, yeah, similarity level of plagiarism on the free plagiarism tool, the plagiarism level is very low, yeah, similarity up to 10%. But when we submit our research paper or manuscript to a reputed publisher, the plagiarism similarity level is high. Yeah, similarity level above 10, more than 10%, yeah, 30%. So I want to know, so this is a publisher authorship conflict or not?
Which software, which detection software have you been using?
On Google website, any software जैसे for example such as Grammarly.
No, Grammarly is not a plagiarism detection software. Okay, Grammarly is just a thing which, it says that it is doing or it is checking your plagiarism, but actually Grammarly does not work. So basically, there are two or three what do you call softwares which scan the internet to find out similar sources. The most common one is Turnitin. Okay, then you have others like Authenticate and others. So if you use, I would suggest that you use a proper software, detection software, plagiarism checking software like Turnitin or Authenticate. The problem here is that these are very expensive. So generally it is very difficult for a single researcher to buy this software or to take a license. So in that case, if you have anybody who is working in an institution, probably he is working in a government university or somewhere, and they have the software, you can send your manuscript to them so that they can check it. Grammarly and others, actually, they are not the proper this thing to check plagiarized work. There will always be a difference between what you get in Grammarly and what you get when you send it, because when you send it to a journal, they will use the latest software like Authenticate and others. So that is why there is a difference. I think
Sir,
yes.
Turnitin Authenticate application is very expensive for everyone.
Yes.
So,
Yes.
so
But
how can subscribe
unfortunately,
it?
there is no other solution to this. Okay, if you want to make sure, absolutely sure that your plagiarism is below that level, then somehow or the other you have to use your connections, your sources, to use this software, because otherwise whatever other freely available source you will use, that will not give you the exact result.
Okay, sir. Okay. Thank you, sir.
Yeah. This is, if you know somebody who is a research scholar in a university or who is teaching somewhere in a university and they have it in their institution, they have subscribed to it, you can send your manuscript to them and ask them to check it for you.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Yeah, welcome.
Thank you, Anand. Uh, any other participant who would like to ask their question can please unmute themselves.
Good morning, sir.
Yes, good morning.
Yes, Sunilji, go ahead.
Sir, how safe are OSS, open source software, is to check the research report as in form of plagiarism report?
Can you repeat the question?
How safe are OSS is to check the plagiarism report of a research paper?
OFSS, I think I'm not hearing you properly. I don't get the question.
No. How safer open
Uh,
source software is
uh,
to check the
uh.
plagiarism of a research paper?
No, open source software, I will not suggest that you use any open source software to check plagiarism. Maybe you can check your grammar, you can check your English spellings, etc. But open source software, I will not prescribe or I will not suggest you to use an open source software. Firstly, because of two reasons. Number one, they will not give you the perfect results. They will not give you the results which will be used by the journals and others when they use their software. Number two, maybe they will, put your they will take your manuscript and maybe it may be posted somewhere, so that next time if they post it somewhere in the internet, then what will happen, that when the journal editor will check your paper, then it will show 100% plagiarism. It is your own work, but since it is somewhere in the internet, the Turnitin or the Authenticate will take it and it will show as 100% plagiarized. So I will not suggest that you use any open source. So it is not safe. If you ask me, it is not safe.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. There is
Yes.
one question which I last to ask, sir.
Yes.
You have yourself, sir, stressed upon the need of collaboration in these times of
Yes.
research. And we being
Yes.
research scholars, we also want to collaborate as well as uh, down in future when we join the
Hmm.
industry, the academia, we will should collaborate. So in this sense,
Yes.
sir, I would like to ask that when collaborating with various people from different geographical areas, we will definitely be
Hmm.
using internet. And internet, sir,
Yes.
as we know, is prone to attacks, thefts, and many such things. So, according to
Yes.
you, sir, what are the best tips wherein we can use our research work and still use internet to transmit it without being any fear of being, cheated out of our own works?
No, the thing is that whenever you are sharing something, it is always best to use an email. For example, you use Gmail, for example. For example, whenever we are sharing our work, we always use Gmail and we have not faced any problems thus far. Yes, if you are so unlucky enough that Gmail gets hacked, then well, we can't do anything about that. But a normal email is enough, to communicate between authors in different places, because there is no other way to do that actually.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
Yeah, we use our normal email. Basically, most of us nowadays have Gmail, and Gmail has, I think, adequate protection. So, unless and until you are very unlucky, it is highly unlikely that somebody will hack into your email account.
Sure, sir. Sure,
Yeah,
sir.
of course, sometimes incidents do happen, but they are very rare.
Certainly, sir.
Yeah.
So I'll invite other participants as well. We have 10 more minutes and we can take few of the questions from our participants. They can unmute themselves and ask their questions. Alternatively, they can put it in the chat box as well. Participants, please. Chandraji, if you can hear me.
Yeah, Siddharthi, I can hear you, sir.
I think Chandanji, we have approached the end of this session and we can close this session, Chandanji, with your formal vote of thanks.
Yeah, thank you, Siddharthi. Good morning, sir. It's really a privilege and an honor to be in your session. The presentation was very, very thought-provoking, and we definitely gained in today's lecture. Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot
Thank
for
you so much.
sparing
Thank you.
your valuable time, sir, for such a nice
Most welcome.
presentation as well as and sir, this is my
Sir, I
second
have a question, please.
opportunity. Yes, I think sir, someone has any question.
Hello.
Yeah,
Yeah, Nitishji.
Yeah, good morning. Yeah, good morning, everyone. Sir, I have a question for you, sir, if you permit me to speak.
Sure, sure. Please go ahead.
Sir, but if we take any sort of picture or chart or something like that from others' work or from internet itself, would that also be
Yes.
considered as plagiarism?
Yes, 100%.
Okay.
100%. If you are taking a picture or a chart, you must always give the at the end, I mean at the foot of the chart, you have to mention the source. If it is from a website, you have to mention the HTTPS, the whole source.
All right, sir. Yeah. Thank you so much,
Yes.
sir.
Pictures,
Thank you so much.
diagrams, flowcharts, models, everything.
Even if it is a natural phenomenon which we extracted from others' work or from open website.
Definitely, you have to code the website. You have to cite the website. Yes.
Okay, sir. Thank you so much.
Because you never know. The site may have a what do you call what do you call, a copyright on that photograph or something.
Yes, sir, that's what exactly what I meant, because
So to be on the
most
safe
of the
side, you
pictures have
should,
copyright associated with them. All right, sir.
yes, yes. So
Thank you so
every
much.
rights is associated with them, so
There is one thing which
they
I'd
will,
also like to ask, sir.
yeah.
Uh, yeah, yeah, sir. So, sir, actually, I was working on a research paper, and
Okay.
there was a link wherein I was accessing some stuff which was essential for my research work. Now, what happened was that during the time of my research, the website was put down. I
Okay.
could still access that web page because I had saved it with me, but at the
Yes.
same time, it was inaccessible to anyone, even if I put that link in my references section. Okay, because
Okay.
the
Okay.
website was put off. So, in that
Mhm.
case, sir, what can we do?
No, even in that case, you should put the link of the website. Okay. Anybody who wants to check, if they go to the website, they will find that it has been taken down due to whatever reason. Okay. So that will authenticate that yes, that indeed that this website was there at some point of time, but now it has been taken down. So I would suggest that you put the link. I mean, what's the harm in citing the source? There is no harm.
Sure, sir. Sure, sir. Thank you, sir.
Here, I would like to
I
say,
now like.
especially to those of you who are research scholars, because we have been through that phase also. Paraphrasing, like I said, paraphrasing, basically what people do is they change, they play around with the words, a few words, and then they feel that, okay, I have played around with a few words, and so paraphrasing is done, so it will not be okay. But like I said, plagiarism is not only taking words here, a few words here and there, it's basically the idea. So if you are taking somebody's idea, you have to rewrite the idea in your own words, basically. It's not just changing a few words or playing around with one or two sentences here and there. That does not make your work plagiarism free. Many of us feel that once we rephrase, when we say paraphrase, we just change a few words and we feel that it is now okay. But basically it is the idea that you have to rewrite in your own words.
Sure, sir. Sure, sir.
I hope this is clear.
Certainly,
Yeah,
sir.
sir.
Certainly.
Sir, just one more thing. What you advised to us. Suppose if we this is Nitish Shekhar. I'm a research scholar in Mahatma Gandhi University, sir. So if
Okay,
we
Nitish.
take an idea from someone's work and if we add upon
Okay.
it, if we make our
Yes.
substantial contribution to it,
Yes. Then it is
then
your work.
I hope.
Of course. Yes, definitely. For example, you take a conceptual framework. Okay. For example, you take a conceptual framework. In that framework, there are four dependent variables. There is one mediator and there is one dependent variable. Okay. Now
Yeah.
you are adding something to that. You are expanding it. Instead of four, you have added three variables of your own. Then you have to
Yes.
write that I have taken this conceptual framework which was given by Mr. X, Dr. or XYZ, okay, and we
Yeah.
have expanded upon this model by adding this variable. That is perfectly acceptable.
Okay,
But
sir.
you have to
So
first
the
of
thing
all
is that
take. Yes.
yes, sir. You please.
Yeah. So the original model that you have taken, you have to code the source for that model. Okay. And then
Yeah.
you will say that we have expanded on this model or expanded on this framework by adding this variables. Okay. And we have retested it in we have retested it under this condition in this place. Okay. In this case,
Right, sir.
it's fine. It's acceptable. It's acceptable. Yes. This is how, models and frameworks and theories are always expanded upon in this manner.
Right, sir. Right, sir. And if even if it is a partial fulfillment of the previous work, even that is okay, sir.
Yes, I guess that is also okay. That is fine.
All
That
right.
is fine. As long as you have quoted the base, the source from where you are building upon, it's fine.
Sir. Sir. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you. Obliged.
Most welcome, most welcome. Because I can understand, because this topic is something which all of us face. Even believe me, not only today you will face it, even 20 years down the line when you are a well-established academician, a professor in some university, even then you will face the same issues.
Yes, sir. This is one thing which is always a big apprehension for every research scholar. If I'm not,
Yes,
now
yes.
if I'm not wrong.
Yes, yes. Not only, like I said, not only for research scholars, even for established academicians who have been working for several years, even they face the same issues, the same problem. Sometimes even we have our own doubts that what we are doing, is it proper, is it acceptable or not? So yes, doubts creep up most of the times. Whenever you are working on a research, in fact, if the doubts don't come, then that means actually you are doing something wrong.
Sir.
Yeah,
Thank you, sir.
doubts have
Thank
to
you so
come.
much.
That is the meaning of research. If you are not having some doubts, if you are not having some challenges, or if there are some things which you do not understand, that means that the research you are doing, actually it is not a very weighty thing. It is not something which is substantial.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely, sir. Thank you so
Thank
much,
you,
sir.
sir.
Welcome, welcome,
Thank you, sir.
welcome.
I now like to invite Chandanji, please.
Thank you, Siddharthi, once again. So I'll continue where I have paused myself. Sir, it's my opportunity. I must say that it is my second opportunity to hear you again, and it's always very. It's a privilege and honor, and your sessions are always very knowledgeable, sir. And I hope each and every participant who have joined us today, they have gained a lot more from this session. And yes, sir, you absolutely, you will very correct that we have to be very honest in our approach if we are heading in any research work. Thank you, sir. I would, at the same time, I would also like to thank our Honorable Dean, Professor Dr. Pavnesh Kumar, sir, who is also the coordinator of this capacity building program, as well as Dr. Sapna Sugandha, ma'am, Associate Professor, as well as Dr. Alka Lalhal, ma'am, Assistant Professor, Department of Management Sciences, for helping us throughout this capacity building program. As today is the last day, and this is the second last session of this capacity building program. So thank you to one and all, especially our participants, because this capacity building program would not have been successful and so effective without your presence. So I'm again thanking to you all. Thank you. Over to
Yes,
you,
and I would
Siddharth.
also like to congratulate the Department of Management Sciences for having such a very well organized. I was going through the schedule, and you have brought eminent speakers from different parts of the country and abroad. And this topic is something which concerns all of us. This is very relevant. So I congratulate you all once again, and my dear friend Professor Pavnesh. I congratulate him as well. He has been so proactive all the time, and I congratulate you all for conducting this capacity building program. And I look forward to more such programs from your side.
Definitely, sir. Definitely. Thank you.
Thank you,
sir.
sir.
Thank you so much.
With your permission now, sir, we can bring this session to a close.
Yes, yes, sure.